Welcome to the Mystic Media channel. I'm your host, Rabina Rastaban, aka The Realist Astrologer. And tonight I am honoring a request from one of my clients, and she's also a viewer of my channel. And she had contacted me, I believe it was a couple of months ago, asking if I had ever seen this documentary. And when I read the title of the documentary, I was like, oh my God, yes, I have seen this. And the thing is, the story is so intriguing that it left a lasting impression upon me. So when I got the email, I was like, oh yes, I definitely need to do this story because I wanted to do it anyway. So by receiving this email from my client, I was like, that's confirmation right there. So this is going to be another video via Zoom web conferencing. This is the platform that I use when I do my video readings and also when I do my classes, when I teach my classes. As you can see, I have my trusty hat on, so you know this is about some serious business. This is my get down hat, or this is my when I'm on a mission hat. I've had this for over 20 years, I believe. So it looks kind of worn and tattered, but this is like my Indiana Jones hat. You know how he would keep that same fedora? But yeah, when I got this hat on, you know, it's about some serious business. So this is a very serious, tragic story. So let me just share my screen. And we're going to get into this story. Let me just pull up the slideshow. Okay, so this title of this video is called What Was Wrong with Aunt Diane? And it comes from a documentary that's entitled There's Something Wrong with Aunt Diane. Now, some of you probably have seen this documentary or at least heard about this story, but there may be a lot of you that don't know about this story. And because she's a Scorpio, I thought this would be very fitting for Scorpio season. So this is about a woman named Diane Shuler. She was born on November 13th, 1972. I don't know her birth time, but I did rectify her chart pertaining to certain factors that pertain to her story and also her physical appearance and whatnot. So I'm also going to get into her rectified birth time. It's just speculation. But I think it really fits. So I'm going to start off by reading about this story just real briefly. My bad. That's them right there. But I need to move my little window. Okay, so the story. The 2009 Taconic State Parkway crash was a traffic collision that occurred shortly after 1:30 p.m. on Sunday, July 26, 2009, on the Taconic State Parkway in the town of Mount Pleasant near the village of Briarcliff Manor, New York. 8 people were killed when a minivan being driven by 36-year-old Diane Shuler traveled 1.7 miles in the wrong direction on the parkway and collided head-on with an oncoming SUV. The deaths included Shuler, her daughter, and 3 nieces, and the 3 passengers in the SUV. The crash was the worst fatal motor vehicle accident to occur in Westchester County since July 22, 1934, when a bus accident in Ossining claimed 20 lives. The ensuing investigation into the crash the way it's written is kind of weird. The ensuing investigation into the crash's cause, they should have said the cause of the crash, received nationwide attention. Toxicology tests conducted by the medical examiner revealed that Shuler was heavily intoxicated with both alcohol and marijuana at the time of the crash. Shuler's husband, Daniel, has consistently denied that she used drugs or alcohol excessively. In the beginning, he denied that she used alcohol at all, and has made multiple national media appearances to defend his wife and call for further investigation into other possible medical causes for her erratic driving. An independent investigator hired by the Shuler family obtained DNA testing and toxicology testing of Shuler's samples and also confirmed the results of the original testing. So basically, she had a blood alcohol content level that was over twice the legal limit, according to the toxicology reports. So this is Diane Shuler, and this is her husband, Daniel Shuler. And this is part of the reason why I rectify her birth time to make her a Cancer rising. So she's a Scorpio, but to me, she has the look, and even her hairstyle is very Cancerian. So that's why, that amongst other factors is why I settled on a birth time that would make her a Cancer rising, because she definitely gives off that Cancer vibe. And she was also known to be this perfect mother. So here is the chart before I rectify her birth time. She has her sun in Scorpio. That's the only thing she has in Scorpio. Her Mars is in Leo. Mars is in Libra at the 28th degree. That is included in a whole Libra stellium. She has Venus, Uranus, and Pluto in Libra. Her Mercury is in Sagittarius, Neptune in Sagittarius, Jupiter in Capricorn. Her North Node's in Capricorn, South Node in Cancer, Moon in Aquarius, Chiron in Aries, Saturn in Gemini. So I'm going to go through some of her aspects to point to the type of character that she was and how that contributed to this situation. So what was wrong with Diane? So her birth number is 13. She was born on the 13th. 13 is a number of death, but it's not always physical death. It could deal with symbolic death. However, I have seen people with 13 birth numbers to have some significant deaths in their life. So the physical death is part of that 13 as well. So 13s, in terms of birth number, can be mentally unstable. And this is not for all 13s, but some 13s. Changeable, detached, excessive ego orientation is lying beneath the surface. So they may not appear to be very egotistical, but there's often an excessive ego orientation that is lying beneath the surface. Also, 13 can be very willful, and they have a tendency to go to extremes. 13 breaks down to 4, and that's the number that corresponds to Uranus. So Uranus, you can also include Aquarius. Basically, that's interwoven in the number 13. Her sun is at the 21st degree of Scorpio. Scorpio is one of the best signs when it comes to faking the funk, and this is why they make very good actors. Scorpio is a great actor, and they are naturals at operating undercover. So to give you a background on the story, basically, her husband, Diane Shuler, insisted over and over again that Diane was not a drinker, she did not use drugs, and that he had no idea how the bottle of vodka ended up in the car. The bottle of vodka, when it was found, was completely empty, and I believe it was one of those big bottles of vodka. But he's claiming that he doesn't know how the vodka got in the car. He doesn't know, he didn't know that she was a drinker, or he's basically denying the fact that she was a drinker. So when I say that Scorpio is one of the best signs when it comes to faking the funk, he could have actually not been aware, but I think he was aware. But however, people around her, people in her life that didn't know her on a personal level, may not have been aware of her propensity to go on these drinking binges. And she may not have been an alcoholic. She might have just would go on binges when she got upset, or when, you know, she was under a lot of pressure or whatever like that. So Scorpio can also wield tremendous power and influence over others, even when it comes to Scorpios who are delusional. So again, the fact that her husband kept defending her and kept insisting that she wasn't a drinker, and that he found it very hard to believe the toxicology reports. He was even saying that there must have been a mistake. He was saying that, you know, she had a tooth abscess, and that could have contributed to the accident, because possibly she had a stroke so they had hired Diane Shuler, the husband, and his sister hired their own private investigator, and they hired their own toxicologist to do some tests to try to counter the official toxicology report. But as it says in that news story, the second report actually confirmed the first report. So she was shit-faced drunk, but her husband, Danny, is insisting that she wasn't. So back to what I was saying. So Scorpio can also wield tremendous power and influence over others even when it comes to Scorpios who are delusional. Scorpio can easily make enablers out of their loved ones. She was a control freak, and that's what it says in the documentary. Basically, she had to always be in control. And they said that she was basically this great mom, and like she was just everything to everyone. So 21 is prone to excess. So Scorpio at the sun in Scorpio at the 21st degree of Scorpio can make one prone to excessive behaviors. Sun in Scorpio is prone to go on binges. Scorpio can consume mass quantities of intoxicating substances and still, kind of function like everything is okay. That's it. That's for the ones that have a high tolerance. Then you have the ones that just like to get totally faded, where it's almost like they're in a semi-conscious state. Now, Scorpio is also prone to psychotic episodes. Now, before some of you Scorpios, jump at me and, want to wring my neck for saying this, take the individual human component out of the signs for a minute. Now, I'm talking about the sign Scorpio itself, because Scorpio deals with the psyche. So naturally, the dark side of Scorpio would produce psychotic episodes or psychosis. So Scorpio, if somebody has a lot of Scorpio energy, or if their sun is in Scorpio, during those dark moments, or if they're just a naturally dark-sided Scorpio, they can be prone to moments of psychosis. So I believe that's what triggered the binge drinking and the weed smoking. So in the documentary, There's Something Wrong with Aunt Diane, that didn't come up once, that explanation. And I was kind of surprised that nobody touched on the fact that she could have been going through a psychotic episode. But I think that's exactly what happened. I don't think that she just started drinking for no reason. I think she was totally out of her mind, and that resulted in her binge drinking and smoking all that weed. But what caused that psychotic break? So I'm going to get into that in a minute. Now, her sun is also parallel the asteroid Estrella. That deals with going too far, going to extremes. You don't know when to stop. It reinforces the tendency to binge. So with her sun parallel Estrella, that's like her being a runaway train, which is exactly what happened that day. Not knowing when to quit, not knowing when to stop, going too far. She also has Mercury at the 12th degree of Sagittarius. That 12th degree can produce a high tolerance for intoxicating substances, also can make one prone to go on the rampage. 12 also is a number that pertains to sacrifice and victim. Mercury is in Sagittarius, opposing Saturn and Gemini. Gemini deals with cars. Gemini deals with travel. Saturn deals with death or loss. Mercury in Sagittarius. Mercury deals with cars and travel. 19th degree, her Saturn was at the 19th degree. 19 breaks down to 10 and 1, and that vibrates to sun energy, which can pertain to children. Also, let me go back. That Mercury in Sagittarius opposing Saturn and Gemini, that can deal with somebody where a lot of responsibility is heaped upon them. And as a result, they develop this character that is tightly controlled. But because of that Gemini influence, there's another side to them that most people rarely get to see. So in the documentary, they did explain that she lost her mother, well, not lost her through death, but she lost her through basically abandonment. The mother just left the family. I wish she was rather young, maybe around 8. And she ended up having to play the role of the mother. And she had to mother her sibling. She also had to take care of her father and all that. So that has a lot to do with this aspect. Mercury and Sagittarius, opposition Saturn and Gemini, having a whole bunch of responsibility heaped upon her. But with that Mercury and Sagittarius, she has a strong need for freedom. So that Gemini influence is going to produce two personas. It's like she has two characters, or she has two modes of operation. So she's liable to switch at certain times. Her moon is in Aquarius. Oftentimes, I see this more often than not. People that have moon in Aquarius, often there's some issue with the mother, like the mother was not nurturing, or the mother might have left the home. A lot of times that moon in Aquarius can produce an unstable personality. The moon could be in square to the sun in Scorpio, depending on her birth time. I would say that it is actually in square to the sun in Scorpio, dealing with how her life was. Also, her Venus is conjoined to Uranus in Libra. That Uranus-Venus conjunction reinforces the 13 birth number. Venus conjoined to Uranus in Libra is going to make it very hard to be in a traditional relationship. There's something about the relationship that is unusual, unconventional, or abnormal. It can also deal with who she's attracted to, and I'll get into that in a little bit. Her Venus is opposing Chiron in Aries. Chiron is at the 13th degree, echoing her birth number. Again, Mercury is in Sagittarius. That, again, like I said, that can produce a high tolerance for intoxicants. And because, oh yeah, that part I was supposed to take out because that was a duplication from the other one. But again, just to reinforce, Mercury in Sagittarius can produce a high tolerance for intoxicants. South Node at the 19th degree of Cancer. This is one of the main points of her chart that points to the issues with being a mother, because with South Node in Cancer, basically in this lifetime, you're not really supposed to be too concerned with becoming a mother or even becoming a wife, living that domestic life. With her North Node in Capricorn, she was supposed to be more about her career. She was very career oriented, but she was also about family, motherhood, and all that. She tried to do it both, which can be very Mercury opposition Saturn and Gemini. So she tried to be the stellar mom, and she tried to be the, the career woman. And as a result, she felt she was under a lot of pressure. And one thing about Scorpio is Scorpio, if, things are going on with them, they have a tendency to repress it. And they have a tendency to repress their negative emotions and keep on repressing it until it gets to a point where it piles up to such a point where there's an explosion of emotions. So that is exactly what happened with Diane, in my opinion. And again, that explosion of emotions, if we're talking about Scorpio, that can manifest as psychosis. So her South Node at the 19th degree of Cancer, again, that 19 can reinforce the theme of children. And then, so it's definitely showing that whole family life, being a mother and all of that. Again, she was kind of faking the funk because that is what she needed to move away from in this lifetime. But she tightly clung to that South Node in Cancer persona. Her Saturn at the 19th degree of Gemini, quincunx Capricorn North Node. That's again having that responsibility heaped upon you. But at the same time, there's this other side to you that gets out every now and then. So that Capricorn North Node can point to her having that stellar reputation. It wasn't just her husband saying that she was this perfect woman, she was this perfect mother, she didn't do anything wrong, and she was like this role model. They even went back and talked to some of her high school schoolmates, and they were just saying she was like the class clown, which is very much Mercury and Sagittarius. But again, with Mercury opposing Saturn and Gemini, that was an act, because that Saturn can result in depression. So it looked like she would go through periods of being severely depressed, but then she would try to mask it by, being all things to all people. Now, the asteroid Shiva, which is known as the Destroyer, is conjoined to the Capricorn North Node, and it's opposing the Cancer South Node. So there it is right there. Basically, her trying to trying to be on both sides of the fence, be the career woman and also be the perfect mother, ended up resulting in that period where she just had that breakdown. And that asteroid Shiva, like I said, means the destroyer, can deal with her destroying her life as well as the lives of others. Her Capricorn North Node is in quincunx to, I already wrote that. Damn, I needed to check these notes. Kind of messy right now. Mars at the 28th degree of Libra. It's in semi-square to Mercury and Sagittarius. Again, that can point to somebody that has a horrible temper, somebody that's prone to be destructive, and that points to the car accident in particular, because Mercury deals with cars and travel, and Mars deals with accidents. It deals with destruction. It deals with injuries. 28, again, there's that theme with children, because 28 breaks down to 10 and 1, and 1 vibrates to the sun in Leo, and that represents children. So we're going to get into some of her asteroids. She has quite a bit impacting her chart. So she had the asteroid Vesta in Gemini. opposing Mercury. Vesta is one of those asteroids that can point to sacrifice. So that was her making these sacrifices for others, but deep down inside, she really wanted to be free-spirited. She really wanted to, you know, do some things for herself, but she would sacrifice her own wants and needs just to project that image. That can also deal with sacrificing her life as well as the lives of her children, the lives of those her nieces or nephews, and also those 3 people that she killed that were in the other vehicle. And then Nemesis is conjoined to Chiron and Aries. And that Nemesis can deal with where you place blame. What it could deal with an enemy, but it can also deal with her being hated even after her death as a result of what happened. And she did, like, people were basically attacking her husband, calling her a murderer and stuff, which in fact she was, because she was basically on a rampage. She didn't care about nobody's lives. She didn't care about the children that were in her car, including her own children. And from the reports, the children didn't have seatbelts on, and her little 2-year-old daughter wasn't even in a car seat. So this woman was on a rampage that day. And like I said, to me, that fits the profile of somebody being going through psychosis or having a psychotic break. Apollo is parallel Chiron and Aries. Apollo is where you keep on hitting your head against the brick wall, but it's also where you try to be on top. You try to be the boss. You try to be a leader. So she had that thing with her where she always wanted to be in control. She always wanted to seem like she was very confident, very capable. Pallas is opposed to Chiron and Aries. That is what really made me look at things like, okay, because when somebody like goes off on the deep end like that, you have to wonder, okay, what is it in their background that triggers such a thing? So I asked myself, with Pallas opposition Chiron and Aries, because Pallas can deal with you trying to please your father, but it also deals with being like a female warrior and you fighting for certain causes and stuff like that. But chiefly, when I saw that, I immediately thought about her father and how the mother left home at an early age. And they said in that documentary that she had to basically play the role of the mother and the wife. So I'm wondering, how far did that go? Could it could have been possible that her father might have been abusing her sexually, and maybe that contributed to her mental health issues? And her husband even said that she did not talk about her background. And her friend said the same thing. She never talked about her mother, but they all knew that her mother wasn't in her life. She rarely talked about her home life. She rarely talked about her past. So again, that Scorpio energy, her suppressing or repressing things, keeping it under wraps. Hebe is conjoined to the moon in Aquarius. Hebe deals with you being in service to others. It can also deal with youthfulness. So that could point to her having a connection with the children that died. Hera is at the 21st degree of Virgo, is contra-parallel Venus and Libra. Hera deals with relationship challenges. A lot of times it can point to being very jealous, being very vindictive. A lot of times it can point to there's some other party that comes in between you and your mate, and then that results in jealousy and vindictiveness. Atlantis is contra-parallel Neptune and Sagittarius. Atlantis can deal with disaster, and Neptune deals with intoxication, including alcohol and weed, other drugs. Isis is at the 13th degree of Leo, parallel Saturn and Gemini. Isis can also pertain to death. It can pertain to things which are scattered or separated. So those kids, when during that car crash, like I said, those kids weren't strapped in. There was no car seat, and I believe that some of them were thrown from the car. So I'm not exactly sure, but that again, that 13 theme, echoing her birth number. Juno is at the 16th degree of Scorpio. Juno can deal with some of the main challenges in your relationships. Some people say that Juno is an asteroid that deals with your marriage in general, but from my experience, Juno deals with the problems in particular in your marriage or relationships, not just marriage or relationships in general. Sappho conjoined to the Capricorn North Node, opposing Cancer South Node. That Sappho can point to same-sex attraction, homosexuality, homosexual tendencies. Her Osiris was conjoined to Mars and Libra. So the slaying of Osiris, basically the myth deals with Osiris's brother Set killing him and chopping him up into 13 pieces. Again, that number 13 echoes her birth number. So the slaying of Osiris symbolizes the struggle between order and disorder. That can point to her Mercury opposition Saturn and Gemini, and the disruption of life by death. And remember, Mars is in semi-square to Mercury. So when you add Osiris into the mix, that brings the theme of death by car accident into focus. She also had Mariah conjunct Mercury. And the myth of that is, it's an Indian myth where it could deal with burning yourself alive. So I'm taking it to mean killing yourself in a car accident. And the fixed star Fasces was conjoined to Jupiter. Fasces can produce blindness, accidents, violent death, risk-taking, perfectionism, and leadership. And she was a little bit away from home. I believe she was about 40 minutes away from home, so it wasn't like she was in the local area. Jupiter can deal with long-range travel, but it can also deal with her just being wanton or excess. So again, she drank excessively, and then it resulted in accidents. But not only that, one of the darkest moments for me of that documentary, because I'm an empath, so when I was watching the documentary, I watched it like 3 times now. There was a point where she was on the rampage and she had pulled over twice. Actually, she pulled over several times, but 2 times she pulled over. She actually called her brother, I think, or maybe it was her brother-in-law. I forget who it was. But she was complaining that she couldn't see. So she was experiencing blindness, which is very much Fasces conjoined to Jupiter. So she was saying, so that definitely shows you she was experiencing those blackouts that are caused by extreme alcohol abuse, but it could have also been a symptom of that psychosis as well. So just hearing that part, it was like it was like almost like I was transported to that scene at that time, and it was like I could empathize what she was experiencing. And to me, that, like, just the whole documentary is very dark, especially when it gets to that point, because it's like, you know, at that point she was totally out of her mind. Even though she could communicate a little bit, she could talk and stuff like that, but her mind was totally gone. It was like somewhere out there, which to me speaks to more than just alcoholism. And the fact that she was able to drive such a long distance before crashing. What made her crash was her going in the opposite direction. But before that, she was driving like a maniac, weaving in and out of weaving in between cars and stuff like that, laying on her horn, tailgating people. So this is reports from witnesses, and people were calling 911 and reporting, someone driving erratically and stuff. So the fact that she was driving like that aggressively lets me know that it was more than just alcohol that was fueling this rampage. And then Alpharetz was conjoined to her Chiron and Aries, and that deals with wanting freedom, movement, and it could also deal with speed. And she was going about, I think it was like 75 miles per hour when she hit that SUV head on. So if you see I didn't post any pictures of the accident, but basically that minivan is total. I mean, you can't, it's basically just crushed. So basically that Alpharetz conjoined to Chiron and Aries is showing that although she was this career woman, she was this mother that was supposed to be perfect, she really wanted freedom. So here's a birth time rectification and synopsis. Her proposed birth time of 8:20 p.m. And I said that because she looks like a Cancer rising to me. Plus it reflects her persona. And then I put it at the 19th degree of Cancer. Actually, it just defaulted to the 19th degree of Cancer because I was sticking with the 20 minutes time. And then it just ended up being 19. I was like, hey, I'm going to go with it. So 19 again could deal with children, love, romance, sex, wanting to be the boss. Also with the rectified birth time, that would make her 4th, 5th, and 8th house be very dominant. So strong house emphasis with the 4th, 5th, and 8th. My bad. That's the rectified chart. That reflects her life because of the children, her home life, and also the 8th dealing with death. So her moon in Aquarius falls into the 8th house with the rectified birth time. And I believe she was a low-key lesbian, not a full-fledged lesbian, but I believe that she was more attracted to women than men. And I believe she used her marriage as a cover. So go back to what I said about her Venus being conjoined to Uranus. That could produce someone that has same-sex attraction. Also, if we're talking, especially we're talking about women, because Venus represents women, and then that Uranus in Libra. So together, that can point to her being attracted to women. But again, being a Scorpio, that's something that she suppressed or repressed within herself. Also, she has Sappho conjoined to her Capricorn North Node. So remember, I said that that Capricorn North Node means that she was supposed to be more about making her mark upon the world, being career oriented, not really being too devoted to family and that whole life as a mother and things like that. Had she lived according to her truth, she may have well been a lesbian. Now, this is all speculation. But again, like I said, from some of the factors that I see in her chart, I would not be surprised if she actually was attracted to women and was in that marriage just because she felt like that was what she was supposed to do. The Arabic parts fit proposed birth time. So there's this tool in astrology called Arabic parts, or I'll say branch of astrology called Arabic parts. I love it. And I don't hear enough astrologers talk about Arabic parts, but I swear by them. So with me rectifying that birth time, and when I pulled up the Arabic parts, I was like, whoa, I might be on to something. Here's the rectify chart. Like I said, the moon in Aquarius in the 8th house, the rectified birth time puts the moon at the 19th degree, and it makes a partile quincunx to that ascendant. I would not be surprised if she was born around this time. Now, with the chart lined up the way it is. North Node at the 19th degree of Capricorn is going to be right on her 7th house cusp. This activity in the 5th house and this heavy activity Libra in the 4th house. And then that can point to, her being in that marriage with her husband, but where she's trying to hide things, because the 4th house can deal with the shadow side of your personality. So, Arabic parts. So here are the proposed birth time Arabic parts. Part of catastrophe, conjoined to Saturn and Gemini. Remember what I said about Saturn and Gemini? That's that car accident, death via car accident. Part of danger or peril is conjoined to her Sun in Scorpio. Part of land journeys, which deals with driving, is conjoined to her Venus. Part of the mother is conjoined to her Sun. And like I said, her mother left the home when Diane was very young. My bad, that's Danny. Part of imprisonment, opposition Jupiter. So again, perhaps she saw part of imprisonment is that in 7th degree of Cancer. Perhaps she considered being a mother, being a wife, being a home or domesticated was like a form of imprisonment to her. Now, let's talk about Diane Shuler. Diane Shuler was quoted as saying this. He said, "She talked to me if things came up." His examples: the house needs painting, the gutters need to be cleaned. So according to Diane's husband, he claimed that him and Diane, like, they really didn't have conversations. She really didn't share anything with him. And if she did talk to him, it was like basic things like the house needs painting, the gutters need to be cleaned. So remember what I said about their marriage and with that Venus conjoined to Uranus, how that can produce an unconventional marriage. It can produce something abnormal, or there's just something strange. So that very much fits that Venus conjoined to Uranus with him. So basically, remember what I said about he kept on denying the fact that she was drunk. He said that she wasn't a drinker and that he don't know how the bottle of vodka got in the car. But then later on in a Larry King interview, he was on several television shows. He was on Oprah as well. During a Larry King interview, he did admit that they would keep vodka at the campgrounds because they were coming from a camping trip that morning. But he's claiming that he doesn't know how the vodka got into the car. I'm like, come on, dude. Anyway, the day of the crash. So on the day of the crash, it was very telling what was going on. So the transiting South Node was at the 0 degree, 0 minutes Leo, conjoined to the sun. that can deal with the death of children, or that, it could just pertain to children, period. The asteroid Estrella was on the Aquarius North Node opposing the Leo South Node. Again, Estrella deals with taking things too far, going to extremes. And the news report said that that was the most tragic accident ever since, I think they said 1924 in that area. Also, transiting Saturn in Virgo was in square to Diane, Saturn in Gemini. So she was going through her Saturn square Saturn transit. Now, when you have major transits like that, a lot of times it's going to take a transit of a personal planet, or the Sun, Mercury, especially the Sun, to trigger that major transit. So that's exactly what happened that day. The transiting Sun in Leo was forming a semi-square to Diane's Saturn, and that Sun triggered that Saturn square Saturn transit. So the Saturn was in Virgo, which can deal with some issue with health or mental health. And it was in square to her Saturn in Gemini. Remember, I said that Saturn in Gemini is what contributed to that death by car accident. The moon was in the crescent phase. Diane was born during the crescent phase of the moon. The asteroid Niobe was conjoined to transiting Venus in Gemini, which can manifest as a woman kills children via a car crash. The asteroid Niobe deals with children being taken from you, or children dying. So Niobe is one of those really tragic asteroids. So whenever I see it in somebody's chart, I automatically know that there's a good chance that they could lose a child. It may not be their child, but it could be a child that they know, a child that they're close to, what have you. But what it's basically, it means that the death of a child is going to impact your life greatly. Also, the asteroid Nemesis was conjoined to Mars in Gemini. So Mars was in Gemini. Gemini deals with travel, cars, during the day, on the day of the accident. Also, the asteroid Eros in Pisces was opposed to transiting Saturn and squaring Diane's Saturn. Asteroid Lilith in Cancer was squaring Diane's Mars in Libra. Asteroid Hygeia conjoined to Diane's Cancer South Node. Asteroid Sisyphus conjoined to Diane's Cancer South Node. Asteroid Arachne in Cancer squaring Diane's Pluto in Libra. So when I saw all these asteroids and fixed stars, and considering other factors in her chart, and I also pulled a tarot card because I was like, what triggered that psychotic break? Because that's what I strongly believe she was experiencing. So here's my synopsis. So I believe that, her marriage was basically, a marriage of convenience. However, Diane was a control freak, and she needed to be in control of every aspect of her life. And she was definitely in control of her husband, or so she thought she was, because her husband really wasn't that dominant. And if you see interviews of him, you could definitely tell that he was not a dominant masculine male. So she was definitely wearing the pants in the marriage. However, I believe, this is my speculation, that on the day of the crash, Danny, her husband, must have revealed to her, or maybe she found out through other means, that he was cheating on her. And when she found that out, that psychotic break went into effect. And then she went on a rampage from that point on. And from that point on, nobody mattered but her. I mean, she didn't even matter. She was just in this tunnel vision type of mode. And, the kids didn't matter anymore. Nobody mattered. But there was a part of her that was still trying to make attempts to cry for help. She was making pleas for help by making those 2 phone calls. But that psychosis was that strong that she still ended up getting back in the car. And that's when she started going in the wrong direction on the freeway and ended up crashing head on into that SUV. So I believe, even though Diane really wasn't into her husband like that in terms of love, because she was such a control freak, learning that her husband basically was seeing someone else, that basically shattered her whole perfect image. Because had it got out that he was seeing somebody, then that would mean, oh, you're not perfect. Your life is, your marriage is messy. And she didn't want to come across as that type of person. So I pulled a tarot card to see what triggered that episode. What triggered her being on a rampage? So the card that I got is the Six of Pentacles. And whenever I see this card in relation to relationships or marriage, to me, and I do this for a living, so I've done tons of tarot readings. So when I see certain cards pop up, I automatically know what they're pointing to. So this Six of Pentacles card can deal with a love triangle. It can deal with her finding out that Danny was sleeping with some other woman, and more than likely it was probably someone that they knew mutually, which would have upped the ante in terms of the level of humiliation and embarrassment. So again, because she was so tightly wrapped, but she also had this other side to her, and then taking all the other factors into account, that's what I believe happened. I believe she found out that Danny was up to no good, cheating with some woman. She went on a rant. She had that psychotic break, totally dissociated from reality, started binge drinking, started smoking weed. Next thing you know, bam, it's over. But she obviously had access to that stuff, which lets me know that Danny wasn't being truthful about her behavior, or about her personality. So remember, like I said, with that Mercury opposition Saturn, she had a lot of responsibility heaped upon her, but at the same time, because Saturn's in Gemini, there was another side to her. So that other side was probably the binge drinker, the heavy weed smoker, and I would venture to say that she would only engage in that behavior when the pressure got to be too much, when things got to be too heavy for her, when she felt like she was about to break her character or come out of her character. She had to numb everything with the alcohol and the weed. And it came out later, I think the sister-in-law did say that, yeah, she did used to smoke weed before bed at night, just, if she was extra stressed out or whatever like that. Well, she probably did the same with alcohol. She probably, would go on these drinking binges and then, just come out of it. And then she could probably spend another year just being very, type A personality, being in control, all of that. And again, like I said, Scorpio is prone to binges. So here is Diane's significator card. It's the Eight of Wands. So this is the card that I pulled because I was like, let me pull a card to represent who she is, her core personality, or who she is at the core level. And it's the Eight of Wands. That's somebody that is high strung. That's somebody that, is very reactionary as well. That's somebody that can go on a rampage when things get to become too much. That can also deal with excess. So that person is prone to excessive behaviors, basically prone to going too far with it. So that Eight of Wands card is very much akin to the asteroid Estrella. And remember I said that asteroid Estrella was in parallel to her sun. But that card is also, guess what? That card corresponds to Mercury and Sagittarius, and her Mercury was in Sagittarius. So again, there it is right there. That Mercury and Sagittarius fueled that whole high-strung nature, her going on a rampage. Mercury and Sagittarius can produce somebody that is rather reckless, and it can make one prone to be in car accidents. Why? Because Mercury is not in a good place with Sagittarius. It's considered to be in its detriment. So Sagittarius is just a naturally reckless sign and is prone to excess. So this Eight of Wands card that's representing her is right on point. So I also pulled a card to represent Danny. So this card for Danny is very telling, because remember I said he kept on denying that she was a drinker and he don't know how the vodka got into the car and all that. And he spent so much money trying to order new tests, and he spent money on lawyers and all this stuff. So I'm like, okay, what does he have to hide? What's in this for him? Like, what's in it for him to cover for his wife even after her death? So here's Danny's significator card, Seven of Cups. This is a card of illusion, delusion, fantasies, where you're basically believing your own lies. You're not living in, you're not dealing with reality. You're not accepting reality. And again, when I see this card come up in terms of relationships, this is another card that can point to infidelity, because it's like that person can't choose. They can't decide on one person, or they're constantly looking for new thrills. That's also a card of addiction. So I would venture to say, I'm speculating that Danny was probably a heavy drinker himself. So he has a lot to hide in this situation. Also, people in the comments section in the YouTube video that showed the documentary, they did bring up a good point. They said that if if it was determined that she was driving under the influence, he wouldn't get the insurance settlement, the life insurance settlement. So that was another reason that gave him more incentive to be dishonest or to be in denial about his wife's drinking, as well as her being drunk on that day. But again, I feel like this is really pointing to the fact that he was a cheater. I feel like this reinforces my belief that he was cheating on his wife, cheating on Diane. She found out about it, and that caused her to have that psychotic break. Because again, she was very tightly wound. She was a control freak. And anything that, would represent the fact that she's not in control like she portrays to be would cause her whole world to, crash down onto her or to implode. And that's exactly what happened with this situation. Again, much of what I'm saying is speculation. However, I feel that, the speculation is rather credible because all the factors in her natal chart. So that's the reading for Diane Shuler. Let me know what you think in the comments section. Again, this is a very tragic story. And just when I think about that day and all the details, I just see nothing but darkness when I think about Diane that day. But again, I feel like she didn't do this consciously. I don't feel like this was conscious intent upon her part, where she was like, I'm going to get drunk, I'm going to get in the car with the kids, and I'm going to kill myself. I don't think that was the case. I think it was a case of psychosis, and that brought about the binge drinking, the weed smoking, and her being on a rampage, and her killing herself as well as those other 7 people. So let me know what you think. And if you would like a reading, you could go to my website at rabina.com. Peace and many blessings. And now I got to end this show, and I got to close out the Zoom conferencing. Matter of fact, where is it? Here it is right here. That's what I do. I had to stop share. All right. So peace and many blessings.